Hey everyone, this is Doug Polk, or as my online handle that I go by is WCGRider. Today we're going to be doing a 10 cent, 25-cent full ring video. We're going to be four tabling it on PokerStars. I've been at the tables for probably a few orbits each, or a couple orbits I guess, depending on the table. I'm trying to get some hands on everybody. And so I'm going to walk you through 10 cent, 25 cent. Um, how to play pretty much optimally against the opponents you're going to encounter there, and try and get a good feel for how these games go. And I think something that's interesting to note about 10 cent, 25 cent, and obviously we have kings. We're going to bump it up here. I feel like I made like $4. But something interesting to note about 10 cent, 25 cent is I think there's a lot of actually bad advice out there. Okay, we get a cold call out of the big blind. I think this person, okay, well that's always good, but I think this person is actually a regular at these levels because I played with this person a good amount when I did my challenge, which I'll get into in a moment here. Here we have top set, and it's pretty drawy board. I'm not really inclined to slow play here. Let me turn off chat. Anyway, I'm not really inclined to slow play here, so I think I'm going to bet about $5 with the intention of putting him all in on the turn. I don't really want to let a card come off. There's a lot of cards that come off that are pretty poor. Obviously that one's fine, so I'm just going to ship it in here. But anyway, recently I undertook a challenge to make $10,000 in a month at NL25, and I didn't make it. I gave up about halfway through. I had made about 3,300. Um, but 24 tabling it over a very large sample, I made about three poker striker big blinds for 100. So okay, and that's really weirdly played. I don't really know. Maybe like an ace queen sort of hand. Um, maybe this isn't a regular. Maybe it's someone with the same avatar. But anyway, I made about three poker striker big blinds per 100. 24 tabling it for about 15 hours a day. So, I mean, obviously that's not a great win rate, but it just shows that if you really grind out these levels, or you put some thought into your play, you can really be pretty successful here. Here I have 8-7 seated, but in early position in full ring, you really should probably just dump these, especially because we have some loose players who are not going to be folding. And against somebody like FSU fan, he's pretty much never going to be folding post flop if he hits any part of anything. And with a hand like 8-7 suited, you really need to have some sort of fold equity to help make it better. Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to turn off chat, I think. I probably should have done that beforehand. Anyway, so back to these games. They are pretty easy to beat. You just really have to be consistent and not let the suckouts get to you because um, people will just call you with just random garbage at lower levels. But that's where you make your money. I mean, this guy behind me who just called, we just opened aces to five big blinds because of a limper. He's 75-5 over 20. So he doesn't really have much of a hand right now. But what this does make this is it makes this pretty high variance because if he could be stacking off extremely late here. So we raise aces. Under the gun limp calls and he min bets. This is almost never a strong hand. People almost never min bet with a set or something like that. But I mean, regardless, against this guy who's crazy. Okay, this guy is a half stack. We are certainly raising with the intention of getting it in. On this board, we're probably gonna make it about 350. We're basically gonna bet about pot. We're gonna pretend that that guy didn't even min bet, and here we're gonna isolate with queen 10 suited, and we take it down. Yeah. So at the low levels, it can be very frustrating. I have a few friends at the moment who are trying to build rolls through the micro stakes, and some of the hands that they have problems with, it's kind of ridiculous, and I think it's fun. This guy just posted under the gun, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take a note of that. But actually, I think that guy knew who I was, but anyway, so one moment here. Okay, so here we isolated a very loose limper with queen 10 suited. We flop a backdoor flush draw, and I suppose backdoor straight draw as well. But but I mean, more importantly, top pair. So we're gonna bet here about $3 for value. This guy's really aggressive post flop. So if he raised me, it would be an interesting spot. This guy's quite passive. So if I got raised, it'd be a pretty easy fold. But anyway, back to what I was talking about before. The thing about micro stakes um, are that a lot of upper level players don't really understand how these games run, because either when they played it, it was much different. And here I'm going to open inject seated from mid position. But it was either a lot softer when they played it, or they didn't play it at all, which is the case with a lot of like mid, even NL 200 and up players. They never really actually grinded through these stakes. Um, I I actually completely built my roll up from $20 playing 1 cent, 2 cent, just about a year ago actually. And here we flop. No, we flop. I mean, some backdoor draws, but more importantly, it's an ace high board, and especially one with no texture, you're always going to be c-betting every ace high board because it's going to get a lot of credit, generally speaking. And here we get min raise. This guy's pretty aggressive post flop. Um, Really, he could be doing this pretty wide, but we have virtually no equity to make any sort of move here, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold it. But anyway, so a lot of players haven't really had to go back through the micro stakes. I think they play very. I think they play different. I'm not saying necessarily that they're a lot more difficult, although I do think that over the past, I mean, even through my career, they have become more difficult. Um, but they're a little different. People there aren't as many just crazy skewed-hearted people anymore, although they do exist, obviously. But you tend to get a lot more people like of the fish, people like Dirty Kron, who are just very very loose, passive. Although I guess that is a standard fish. But you also get a ton of people like Boy who's playing 7-1 over 29. Um, or just some of these other people like PISAA. And we're talking a crazy name. Okay, here, so he limps. I check 10 dudes. I'm actually going to take a stab at it here. I think that he's probably going to lead when he hits the flop. It's unlikely he really has much of a hand, so it's going to try and take it down. But yes, there's a lot of really nitty people who are just not going to pay you off. And I think that a big mistake a lot of players make in the microstake games today are they get too aggressive in spots where you're unlikely to be ahead, and they aren't able to make folds that would probably be good folds. Um, okay, so I'm actually just going to complete with the ace 10 suited. I think that's fine here. We have a lot of guys who are short stacked. We're just going to call the nines, but a lot of guys who are short stacked will definitely get paid off when, okay, we get min raise. But when we flop hands, we're very likely to be paid off, and ace 10 suited plays well multi-way, so definitely going to complete. And on this board, we're just going to check fold because we're out of position 5-way. And normally we're going to play fairly tight from the blinds, but in this spot with a hand like ace 10 suited, I don't think anyone's really going to argue any way other than to complete there. But anyway, so back to what I was talking about micro stakes. You have to realize you have to take what's given to you with the micro stakes, meaning no one is good really. There are not many good players. But that doesn't mean you can either just run everyone over, or that doesn't mean that you can only value bet versus certain people. It means you have to understand your opponent and adjust them accordingly, and try and just filter out the variance and just play solid. One of the problems that I had when I played the recent challenge that I did was that it becomes very difficult to keep your mind playing your A game when you're playing so many hours. But one thing that kind of thing is good for is it really just builds a total tolerance to like a total tolerance from day to day, hour to hour, hand to hand results, because you start to learn, 1,000 hands is nothing. 10,000 hands really isn't that much. 25,000 hands really isn't even that huge of a sample. It really isn't, until you get like 50 or 100,000 or, even more than that, hands where you start to have a meaningful sample size. But the micro level still can be beat for a lot. So anyway, I'm going to kind of leave that subject alone now, and kind of go into ways that you can adapt when playing low levels, to help improve your win rate. And I think a couple things right off the bat. One of the biggest problems that I had when trying to play micro stakes was how to play Ace King pre-flop. Ace King at mid stakes games, or even I'd say 1-2 and up. Ace King pre-flop is pretty much the nuts because people just make moves so much, and because you have a blocker on aces and a blocker on kings, you almost can never get it the money in bad. Okay, and here slow roll, min bets. I'm just going to cold call. Yeah, so you don't get it in bad too often, but at micro stakes you do. You cannot get ace king in pre-flop. I really I can't stress that enough. I think even like I hear mid stakes regs, just 3-bet ace king, 4-bet ace king, get it inverse aces or kings, it's cooler. You really it's not because they're at these levels. 3-bets are usually kings and aces, but of course occasionally queens or ace king. 4-bets are almost exclusively kings or aces, and sometimes just aces actually. Sometimes people will only 4-bet aces. Um, and here we pop a king, but he min raised pre-flop. We don't really know what that means, but on an ace-high board, I think it's probably best just to let it go. Yeah, and he just shows a6. So I think we actually stacked slow roll on different. No, sorry, no, slow roll actually doubled through us. I played a hand against him a little earlier where I had ace king. Um, I guess I should have taken a note that his under the gun min raise was jack 10 suited. Um, and I flopped top two. And he flopped a straight, so a straight with a flush draw. So, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's pretty standard stuff. But a lot of the times, you actually can get away from hands in the micro stakes where you probably be. And against a half stack, top two is not one of those situations by any means. I'm not saying that a fold could possibly be reasonable there, but generally speaking, people are honest with you. People when they raise you, they almost always have it. The only kind of people who don't are people like FSU fan. Let's see, we have another person like that. Pretty much FSU. I think there was another. Yeah, this guy is pretty aggressive. I think as well. But generally speaking, if you look at most of these guys, I mean, we have a lot of really passive people. Although we don't have much sample size yet, but if you look around, almost everyone is really low. I mean, even this guy, he's playing pretty tag. He's at 2, 1, 0. I mean, generally speaking, people are fairly passive, and that just goes to show the lower levels, people are not playing for deception. People are just they're just playing their hands, and so I think it's important to recognize that. As far as full ring goes, what percentage of hands do you want to be playing and stuff like that? I really think you can mix up your style, but generally speaking, you need to play tight under the gun. That was one of my mistakes I made actually when I was playing this a few weeks ago. You need to play fairly tight under the gun, and in late position, you want to be much more aggressive. And here we this is kind of a margin open, but I think it's okay. Um, but in late position, you want to be hammering it, and I also support a 3 big blind raise if the pot is unopened in late position because I think it really won't change how often people play back at you. I'm in here four-way with absolutely nothing. We're just trying to check fold it. Really, there's no other option here. Not too interesting. But in late position, I much prefer a 3 big blind raise because people are just they're not going to adapt their range accordingly. Of course, I like a 3 big blind range, 3 big blind raise at higher levels as well. So just for what that's worth, it puts you in some better spots post flop, I think. And also because your range generally is going to be weaker, if you get 3-bet and you fold or whatnot, you lose a lot less. Whereas your early position to mid position range, especially in full ring, it's going to be primarily for value. It's almost never going to have hands that when someone calls you behind or when somebody raises you, you're really in a tough spot. So excuse me. Anyway, so it's important to understand position. And in full ring, I think it's more important than even six max, to at least understand position. I mean, not that it isn't important in six max, but I think playing a hand under the gun that's marginal in six max is much more forgiving than in full ring. Anyway, so let's try and focus a little more on hands that are going on now that have a little rundown of microstakes in general. Here I can't quite see this guy's name. Fat Cat 1028 opens. He's been running pretty loose pre-flop, and KU8 hoops calls behind. He's running a little tighter. I would say, as far as hand ranges go, KU hoops will never have a very strong hand here. But Fat Cat has also been pretty loose, and if he was full stacked, I think a cold call behind becomes better. But he's half stacked, and he's pretty loose pre-flop, so we're gonna three bet it, and against him we're obviously we're three betting with the intention of getting it in. Um, a three bet size, just a general rule of thumb, and everyone just folds. Um, and of course three bet sizing and four bet sizing as you move up becomes a little more natural, I think. But at the micros, I think it's pretty good to go with just your standard three times their raise, and then add in a little bit more for every person who's called behind. There I probably made it a little small, but Fat Cat was only half stacked, so we didn't really have to worry about giving him implied odds here. So here we have jacks. Bay 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 Busy. It's hard for me to actually busy. It's hard for me to actually read his name. He wants with the gun. He's really nitty, but again with jacks. We're gonna go ahead and raise it to 2 because someone posted dead money, and we're really hoping to get to play against FSU fan because he's been pretty crazy. And although his stats for some odd reason are not popping up at the moment, and we just take it down. But really, I'm surprised he folded. To be perfectly honest with you, but you want to play against hands against the FSU fans. You don't really want to play hands against the busies. Also, I think it's interesting that he plays 6% of his hands. And of that 6% of his hands, he was perfectly fine with limp folding in early position, which is frankly terrible. Here we have sixes. We're gonna go ahead and raise it up against uh, Vitek, Vitek, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so here we have ace queen, and this is a spot where I actually prefer flat. We're gonna be in position. We don't really know too much about TD pump at the moment, so we're just gonna flat behind. Here, oops, I did not mean to press check. Okay, well that was a mistake. I thought I had a time button pressed. Okay, well I blanked there for a moment. But you definitely want to lead that flop. Checking was not correct. Because there could be flush draws, a lot of straight draws. And our hand definitely has good equity on the flop, pretty much no matter what he has. Unless of course he flops straight or something. But against somebody who's playing, as this he is, that's pretty unlikely. So you definitely want to bet and build the pot when you have a hand like that. That check was I guess I just spaced and I thought there was a time button or something. So here we flat ace queen behind. Obviously this is not the flop we're looking for. We're just gonna have to give it up. And it does feel sort of weak to have played the hand like this, but you have to remember that these guys' opening ranges are pretty tight. This guy's I mean, okay, 10%. Yeah, I guess maybe it's not as tight as some players, but generally speaking, most regs at low levels have a pretty tight opening range. And when you would three bet a hand like ace queen, sure you might take it down, but when he calls you or he re-raises you, you're in a tough spot. And obviously you have to fold if he re-raises you. And if he just calls your three bet, then you probably have dominated hand anyway. And of course here he had king nine suited, just proving me right completely. Brilliant read. But no, generally speaking, even if he folds, your hand will not play well against his range that he continues with. So I'm also going to he opened nine suited. Just so we know he's. I mean, it's sad to indicate that he's loser, but just so we know that he will play some more garbage stuff. And he opened that to 3 big ones. Anyway, so you want to adjust the player, but you really don't want to get into too many marginal spots with marginal hands. And normally I'm not I'm not a huge fan of calling at lower levels. I think if you can play well post flop, that it's perfectly acceptable. And against somebody like this, I don't really see much of an option other than just a flat there. Here we have ace 3 suited from the hijack. Um, you know, I can see an argument for opening and an argument for folding. The blinds are fairly tight, and third degree looks like he's probably gonna be pretty tight as well. But iced T-Rex looks pretty loose and pretty aggressive. So I just don't really know how often he's going to give us credit for a hand, or how often we can get him to fold. So I actually am just going to fold. And this might be a pretty weak play, but I think with someone like Ice T-Rex behind you at the low levels, that's a perfectly acceptable move. And I mean, you don't have to be afraid to fold at the low levels. I mean, people are not going to be taking advantage of the fact that you're opening a tighter range. They're just not. They're just not paying attention to anything with what they're being dealt or the hands that they have. And here, I think we're gonna find a new table if this guy sits out. It's kind of a bad table anyway. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and leave, and I'll just get another table. But yeah, so when it comes to hand reading at lower levels, it's important to just realize that they generally have what they're telling you. So when you have a marginal spot, it again it's okay to lean towards folding. It's perfectly acceptable. Because a lot of times they will have the hand that they're representing. And as you get higher, things become a little more complicated. The regs become better. The fish tend to get a little more aggressive. They become more spewy, and you have to make some call downs. But at low levels, it's much more about the big folds you make than the big calls you make. And someone told me that, and I thought that rings fairly true for microstates in general. Um, so not too much going on at the moment. And that's just a byproduct of playing full ring. Four tables of full ring is a very different animal than four tables of six max. Because you just don't get hands as much, or you don't get hands as often rather, and you play a significant amount less of your hands. So anyway, let's talk a little bit more about how to play post flop at the micros. And we really just have not had a great spots to talk about post flop too much. But generally speaking, you want to be aggressive. You want to be aggressive in pots where you're against players that will fold you. Or in spots where like it's limped and you're in the big blind, you check it. Like let's say there was an early position limper and then a late position limper. And I'm actually just going to fold king queen under the gun. I think that's pretty standard for folding. There's an early position limper and a late position limper, and you check 10-7 offsuit from the big blind, and the flop comes like 8-6-2 rainbow. Even though you don't have a hand here, this is a great flop to just take a shot at, because the chances are the players, if they had any kind of strong ace, they would not have limped in, and the chance of them really having an ace at all isn't that great. Because again, they probably are going to raise aces. There's something, and then if they as they get tighter, meaning they might not raise some like medium strength aces, like ace jack type stuff. Then their range becomes primarily pocket pairs, and when they're limping in primarily pocket pairs, they either have a set or they have something that cannot continue. So it's not a bad flop to just take a stab at. So you want to play aggressively post flop. However, I think that as far as playing draws go post flop, I think it's much better to play them more passively, because at higher levels, when you get, let's say at higher levels you're dealt king queen suited, and let's just say you're in a six max game, um in mid stakes no limit, you're dealt king queen suited on the button. It folds to you. You open. You get a flat call out of the blinds. Flop comes 10-8-4 with a flush with your flush draw. They check. You see bet. They check raise. Chipping in can never be that bad, because okay. So here and I'll get back to that in one moment. So here SG4BR0, and here's the spot where we're trying to stab at it, and here we're just gonna open. He's playing 6-4.5 over 66 hands. So, and this seems unbelievably nitty, but I think a cold call is much better than a 3-bet, because when he's playing that nitty and he's under the gun, his range is heavily weighted towards high pocket pairs, and by 3-betting, he never shows up with a worse hand. So basically, our goal here is we're planning on calling one street, possibly two streets, but you really can't get value from a player that nitty. Like there's no value here. We can raise and he might fold, but the only hand we potentially get value from here is really jacks. I don't think he can continue tens, so we're gonna go ahead and flat it. Um, and the P-Dub comes along, and I have a feeling the P-Dub is a pretty weak player. Let's see how long he's been here. He's been in the field for a little bit. Looks like he's been playing a few pots. So his bet of $1.75 into the pot did seem fairly weak, and P-Dub seems like a weak player. So I actually do not mind donking this because I think P-Dub will come along with a wide range of hands, and we're only going to get raised. I mean, obviously SG4 RBO is not folding kings or aces, or even jacks now. So when we get raised, we're completely on with the hand. But I think that the P-Dub will come along here. If we check and P-Dub checks and SG checks behind, then there's a lot of bad rivers. Or I mean, there's only I guess two really bad rivers with an ace or a king. A 9 isn't that great, and a jack wouldn't be that great. But I think by donking, SG doesn't get out of line, um, and we could potentially pick up value from the third person. Where again, if he checks, it's going to be difficult on the river. We're still going to be three-way. It's a lot of bad cards. And if the P-Dub has any sort of draw, he'll just fold. Whereas he could have, a variety of gut shots, possibly maybe turn a flush shot. I mean, who really knows? And also, I'm gonna put a note on SG4BO that just so we know that even though he's playing pretty tight, he will c-bet even three-way. And also this lets us know a little bit about his bet sizing. He bet 175, which means if we see him bet, more like pot size bet later on and it's for value, we know he's c-betting smaller amounts rather than value betting. Um, Anyway, but yeah, so the milk kind of weird spot, and normally you would play a hand like that at small to mid stakes, at least in my opinion. But I really don't see that being that bad. We can get value from a what seems to be a poor player, and again, for some reason, stats aren't showing up on him. I don't know why, but we get value against a weaker player, and we get 3-bet. Maybe this guy's not as weak as I thought. And obviously I'm gonna fold. I just wanted to see if he was. Just look at the hand here just real quick. But there's no way we can continue with ace jack out of this. And he chose ace deuce. Okay. Okay, so now what that tells us about this guy is he enjoys showing bluffs. He's gonna play it pretty aggressively. He's probably playing pretty loose. Um, and he's capable of bluffing. Now that doesn't mean by showing us that bluff, he's going to be bluffing all the time because he might show that bluff as an image type deal, and he'll never bluff again. But we do know that he is capable of bluffing, which is where we're getting out of this. So he raised 10. Flop comes Jack 7-3 with a flush draw. There are quite a few draws here. There's a lot of gut shots, and there's a flush draw. So I'm going to go ahead and take a shot. Again, we get snap min raised by the P-Dub. The reason I like betting this flop, I think by checking, too many cards come off that we don't like. This is a tough spot because if we call, we're sort of committing ourselves to call later streets. We were three-way and we don't even have top pair here against this guy, so I'm actually gonna let it go. And he's gonna be bluffing a lot, but the problem is if he's willing to fire more barrels as bluffs, there's no way for us to really continue very well against him. So I think just to avoid marginal spots, just let it go. Here we have deuce under the gun, and I personally raise all pocket pairs, and ace king, ace queen, and maybe ace jack suited from under the gun. Um, I think all pocket pairs are pretty profitable from just about anywhere. So here we have ace king suited, facing an under the gun raise, and this is a spot where I don't mind a flat because by three betting he's only gonna 4-bet stronger hands, and it allows very weak players like Louise Oakley to enter the pot with with very poor holdings. And it keeps our range strong against their range. So, and again, this would totally not be standard in a small mid-stakes game. You would three bet, he'd four bet, you'd chip it in, and if he had you beat, it's cooler. But at small stakes, it just isn't like that. The games just play totally different. Okay, so this guy bets pretty quickly. We totally whiffed the flop. We have a good shot, but we're not gonna the applied odds here with a $2 bet, so we're just gonna dump it. Um, anyway, so back to what I was talking about before we had a series of hands. Check raising like something like King Queen suited. In like a small to mid stakes game. Or I mean, sorry, facing a check raise. With a hand like King Queen suited when you have a flush draw. Shipping it in when you have overcards and a flush draw isn't that bad because people generally check raise you fairly wide. So shipping it in, a lot of times they fold, and when they do call, I mean, worst case scenario, well, I don't know. I think you're probably worse against a higher flush draw, I suppose. But worst case scenario, generally speaking, you're going to be against a set, and when you're against a set, it kind of sucks. But you still have some decent equity. I'm not exactly positive what it is, but I think it's around 25% equity. I could be off though, so don't necessarily quote me on that. But you do have some equity, and most of the time they're not going to have a set. They're going to have one pair, flush draw themselves, straight draw, something where they're just getting very aggressive with the hand and trying to take it away from you. And here we're going to leave the table. So shipping it in isn't that bad. But at micro stakes, they don't check raise you wide. When someone check raises you, they're saying, I have the nuts, and that if you don't have the nuts, you should get out of the pot. That's basically what they're saying. Or close to it. Obviously, we're not going to fold the second nut, stuff like that. But generally speaking, check raises are very, very strong. And actually, there's a funny hand during my challenge against Tilt, Tilt, Tilt. This guy is very nitty. I reformatted my database, so we won't have hands on him. But I guarantee you, over the course of the rest of this video, he'll end up being something like 15-4, and pretty passive post flop, because he's just a nut peddler. But I flopped, I think, mid set. There was like a three-way all in, and this guy had bottom set. And like I raised, he cooked it back. I re-raised, he cooked it back, so I chipped it in. And some random other donk who decided to slow play aces, got it in there as well. But yeah, and he rivered he rivered quads against me. And then I think he said like justice in the chat or something, which I found kind of amusing. But I mean, it's variance. What are you gonna do? Yeah. So against check raises, generally speaking, or against raises or bets in general, with draws, I think it's much stronger to be calling with them, assuming you're getting the correct implied odds, because people will pay you off. That's the good part, I suppose. They're very loose, but they also will pay you off quite liberally. There we go. It isn't nearly as bad, because that's the other element to draws at higher levels. People don't pay you off when you hit. Except for, I mean, I guess they go for more flush draws. Straight draws are usually quite hidden, so that they have good value when you hit. Because it's much more difficult to put somebody on a straight rather than a flush, because there are so many combinations of hands that can theoretically make a flush when the flush comes in, and usually straights, they're a little more hidden. Again, I don't know the exact odds. I would imagine, I guess, just from hand ranking, straights are more common, but I don't know exactly the numbers on it. But generally speaking, people are much more afraid of flushes than straights. Um, yeah, so these players will pay you off when you hit. When you hit your sets and they have overpairs, you are getting a stack. When you hit your straight and they have a set, you're getting a stack. When you hit set and they have two pair, you're getting a stack. Like, that's where your money is made, at least in full ring. It's a little different in micro six max, but in full ring, your money is made from hitting big hands and them being stupid. Your money is not made from super sick thin value bets. Although it's important to value bet, I'm not taking away from that. when you have the better hand, you should be betting for value. There's no doubt. But I mean, these people, they'll call you down so loose that it's important to realize eventually you're going to need to have hands to play. And against these two in the blinds, I probably would be opening almost any two cards from the button because they're both pretty nitty. So here we're gonna see it's not a great board to see bet, but from how this guy's playing pre-flop, I would say his range is primarily low pocket pairs, to mid pocket pairs, and so he either has a set here or he has nothing. The majority of the time. Although this guy I think did reference me in the chat, so the chance he could just try to play back, but he's either going to have a set or just totally nothing there a lot. So I like to see bet even on that whatever board. Whereas again, if I was against like FSU fan, I would not see bet. Here I'm going to make a pretty loose play. I'm going to I guess lose for full ring, I suppose. Again, the 6 max would be pretty standard. But mid position isolation. FSU fan is playing way too many hands and playing quite poorly. And so we're going to isolate him with a raise here. And we're going to add an extra big blind. So because I think he's likely to call no matter what, and it helps keep additional players out of the pot. So by making it 150, we can help inflate the pot. His early position limp range doesn't necessarily mean he's strong. I saw, I think, I've seen a few videos where people say that someone's under the gun limp range is going to be stronger than their late position limp range. And I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. I think the people who are limping their hands, generally speaking, unless they're trying to limp raise you, with eighths or something, generally speaking, when people limp hands, they're normally just bad, and they just want to see a flop. And so I think that whether they're in late position or in early position, they're really just trying to play their hand for its face value. So all right. So here we have jacks and FSU fan min raises. I don't really know what a min raise means, but we're gonna make it 3. And again, I'm expecting to be called here. And this is a little different because, like, let's say busy, under the gun min raised, or let's say SG4 RBO under the gun raised. I'd be flatting jacks. I would be flatting jacks because they just do not have value when you 3-bet. So here we raise and we have an interesting spot. PCH is also a very bad player. He just straight up flatted our 3-bet which was half a stack. And I don't necessarily think that means he has a strong hand. He could very well have a strong hand, but I certainly don't think that means it's exclusively strong hand. So I'm gonna bet about $6 into the pot here. And I'm gonna 3-bet kings because button raise could be isolation. And I'm pretty much putting in with kings every time. Okay, so yeah, we stack him. But yeah, so that does not indicate strong hand. Even though over 11 hands he's yet to pre-flop raise, he pretty much snap called our 3-bet. I think if he had a good hand, he'd be much more likely to ship it in, or at least think about a decision. I mean, he just straight up snap called, like almost like it was on auto call. And let's see, what hand did he have? He had ace king, so I suppose he had a pretty decent holding. But again, I don't know what you think about. He should have just shipped it, and he had $2.80 behind. There's really no point. There's really no point in flatting. So we think about the kings, and he folded. He actually doesn't seem too bad of a player. He's playing 14-14, and again, not really a major hand sample, but people who are very bad, their stats indicate they're very bad rather quickly. Like we already know FSU fans terrible. We already know, and I'm actually just going to complete here. We already know the D pub is bad. We already know the Bob 79 is pretty bad. I mean, it's pretty easy to tell who's just going to be terrible and who's going to be somewhat decent. One moment here, real fast. Okay. Anyway, so here, I wouldn't mind a flop stab, but the only problem I think with taking a stab on a flop like this, obviously no jack or no. Okay. he checked and he snap checked behind. So I actually take a stab here. I expect this guy to fold almost always, and this guy may call. But anyway, the reason I don't particularly like taking a stab at this flop is because there are a ton of gut shots, and none of them are folding because this is NL25. Oh, we get called here, and he has eights. So, so that was a pretty good soul read there by Darren TT, and I'm actually surprised he called eights there, but maybe could have been the turn. But anyway, so like on a board like King Jack Jack with a flush draw. Okay, and here again, I'm gonna flat Ace Jack, and if anyone else really raised under the gun, I would fold. But Bob seems pretty bad. But on a flop like that, and no flush shots folding, no jacks folding, no kings folding, no gut shot probably folding. There's just too many hands. And I figured by the river there was it was unlikely for anyone to have much real hand. I did not factor in the likelihood of getting called by pairs like eights into that. So we flat. P-dub comes along, which is also another important thing to note. If there's going to be a really terrible player like would come along, flatting is also a valid option. But we flop nothing, so really no reason to continue. He even bets pot, which usually indicates a fairly strong hand. Um, anyway, so yeah, so about good players, bad players, and hand samples. I think that the samples which it takes to see if someone's good or bad. I think a lot of people overplay. You need a huge hand sample to really tell much. But NL25, people are just generally speaking so bad that if they are really as bad as they seem, that their stats when it gets up really quickly. So here we have Ace Queen. We're obviously going to raise it up to try and get some value. Here we top a flush. The reason we basically never slow play the micros are, well, here I'm not too worried about us being beaten unless someone has a set or two pair. But if a club comes off, it's going to be very difficult for us to get action. And this is definitely a good board to c-bet, even though, well, we're going to take. But so I'm actually going to c-bet here, and I know we do not play very aggressive post flop, but there's just so many cards that a turn really hurts. Really hurts our hand. And we make it, I guess, a smaller 3-bet. But when he min raises me, I'm expecting him to have a hand he wants to play. So this is almost always flush over flush. That's the beauty of full ring. He has like a set or flush here, like always. So anyway, but by letting a card come off, it sort of kills our action. It sort of kills our action because let's say he has 2-6 suited, and the turn is a 7 of clubs, and I elected to just cold call his min raise. He's not going to be putting in a lot more money. He's going to be shutting down, maybe calling one bet. He's most certainly not going to be trying to play a huge pot with that. So even though we're playing fairly, I mean, we're playing pretty tight aggressive post flop, but we do not 3-bet or 4-bet very often. You kind of have to there, just because he's not going to pay you off. So just things to note. Let's change it up. Let's say we had like deuces on like a king 9-2 board, and he bets and he min raises. That's a much more acceptable slow play, because you're not going to be beaten by very many hands ever, and the ones that you are beaten by, they weren't going to fold to begin with. So really, it's just cooler spots. Here we flat sixes from under the gun range. This guy's running pretty loose, but I'm going to imagine his under the gun range is a little tighter than how he's running. And here we open ace jack from a position, which is pretty standard. We get called in 2 spots behind. Station BC seems pretty okay, and we're obviously dumping the sixes. It's unfortunate. This guy's really nitty though. Okay, so all right, so another interesting spot. This is actually kind of crazy because Bob 729 is running super loose, and he's doing a lot of raising and re-raising. I think, but I still, but ace queen, I would flat. The only advantage to calling here is if we call P-dub's almost certainly coming along. Excuse me. So we're gonna see a flop 3 ways, or 3, potentially 4, I guess, ways with 2 absolutely terrible players. But ace jack is just too likely to be dominated. We're too likely to be up against ace king, ace queen, queens, kings, aces. And even though Bob has been playing pretty loose, our hand just does not play well facing a 3-bet. So I prefer a fold here. And if I had an ace queen, I'd probably flat. And if I had ace king, to be perfectly honest with you, Bob is actually one of the players I wouldn't mind getting in pre-flop with ace king. But then again, a flat isn't bad because P-dub is pretty terrible. So you could see a flop with two bad players with ace king. And although it sucks because about 2/3 of the time you're going to have to check fold, when you do hit, you're going to have a lot of value to extract. So here, P-dub is kind of betting random weird amounts, and Bob's kind of gone into check call mode. Um, he donks 5 on the river. I don't really like. It's just so difficult to be able to put together an accurate hand ranges. I would imagine Bob had something decent from pre-flop from his 3-bet. But the P-dub could really have a wide range of hands. He could have flush draws, straight draws, some random pair. Like he's just so crazy that like his line really could be just about anything. And here apparently it was not very much because he folded to a $5 river bet. But you could tell from that hand like post flop play of the migrants is so bad. We open, we get 2 flat calls by a total nit and two terrible players. All right, so we get 2 cold calls by one by a nit, one by a really bad player, and then a 3-bet from a pretty loose player. Here we fold. P-dub calls, and God knows what he called with. Really could be just about anything. Um, the flop into a pot of what? I mean, at least 10. Bob bets 4. Then checks, and P-dub bets 7 into a pot of 18. And then Bob bets 5 in the river. Like they just play so bad. Like it's difficult to even know what you could really accurately put them on. And I can understand the frustration at micro levels because you just wouldn't have this kind of stuff happening nearly as much. Um, Generally speaking, Bob will have a strong hand, and P-dub will have random garbage though. So here we open sixes, we get called behind with offset, always money making. We're gonna bet about 150. If he had a little more behind, I would probably bet a little closer to pot. But here I don't mind a bet of 150. Anyway, so a lot of these players are just really quite poor. And to exploit that, you kind of have to think about what they're doing, and when you hit hands, bet for value, and don't let yourself get into spots where you're going to have a weaker hand, or you're going to get into spots where you don't really know what to do. And that's part of why I think folding hands like ace jack to the 3-bet, the guy's pretty loose. Our hand might be good, but you're going to get into a lot of really marginal, terrible spots where you're not likely to have a better hand. And I think it's important to avoid those spots until you can really get a better idea of what someone's doing. Um, so yeah, I think at the micro levels, you really want to be giving 3-bet channels some credit. Now, let's say Bob does that again. Let's say Bob, we open a checkmate position and he three times us again. And just from the way he's playing, he's starting to seem like he's going to be pretty loose. And this will be an interesting hand because he's going to have the showdown in his hand. So he had sevens, and he fired into 4 players with sevens with an overcard. So Bob is playing pretty aggressive here. It was also particularly bad because okay, and here I'm actually going to open Queen six suited, because just look at how unbelievably nitty these players are behind me. And again, tilt, like I said, 18-5, whatever. SG4, 10-7. Vdiego hasn't played a hand yet. I mean, people just go to such extremes at lower levels. Like they don't have, they're unable to really truly balance how they're playing. They're either just playing absolutely crazy, or they have no understanding of the game. And here we just see ace king, queen 6-4 board. We're gonna basically be c-betting just about any board that comes, face card high, ace high, with a couple smaller cards, preferably no 10, where you're gonna be c-betting. I don't think that you really can go wrong with that. So here we have ace-5 suited. Not the big blind's really nitty, but this guy's kind of shorter. But I'd much rather open it than call, and I think folding is too nitty given our position. This guy's very likely to call, and this guy's very likely to fold. So we're probably going to see a flop. Okay, and he 3-bet us. I'm just going to dump it. Even if he was full stacked, I'd probably dump it. We're going to be in the pot with a dominated hand. It's much easier to let it go. Over 10 hands, he's yet to raise on pre-flop, so we can go ahead and give him credit for that. But yeah, so generally speaking, the tables play two extremes. And that's why I think it's important to recognize when you're at a table, am I playing against a very loose table or am I playing against a very tight table? Because when you're playing against loose tables, you need to tighten up your range for value. And you need, when you're playing against very, very tight tables, you need to get pretty aggressive in a late position. And again, you're not going to see too much 3-bet bluffing. Okay, and we get re-raised again. I'm getting kind of the vibe from Darren DT that he does not really believe we have much of a hand very often. But we're out of position and he's simply too short for us to do anything. So how we're going to change that is we're going to tighten up when he's still involved in hands, and we're going to try and raise a little more for value, and we're going to open a little less marginal holdings. That said, with Queen Jack suited, I'm going to be opening regardless of whether he's there or not. In late position, it just has too much value. So we open kings under the gun, and it just folds around, but not much you can do there. Here we have Jack 10, pretty needy blinds. P-Dub probably going to call us or be out of position, but he's just so bad that I think we can get a lot of value when we flop like a top pair type hand. And I'm expecting him to call split every time. So here we flop middle pair on an ace high board. So excuse me. Even though it just turns our hand into a bluff, this is just a great board to see bet because Station BC is gonna have pocket pair here almost every time, and P-Dub's gonna give us respect on an ace. Okay, so when he flats that, I'm putting his range very much weighted towards something like deuces, or maybe even like he flatted an ace king, ace queen to have a hand pre-flop. I think our hand is virtually never good. I'd be surprised if the 3 of hearts really helped him. And if he bets out here, that surprises me a little bit because and he does bet out here. But when someone plays 0-0 over 25 hands, normally their pre-flop hand range does not include many suited hands. But regardless, I think regardless, the 3 were beat. So definitely just gonna dump it. Yeah, so I'm surprised. I'm surprised he let out like that there, given what his pre-flop hand range is likely to be. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and sit out the next orbits here, and then after I finish, we'll do a little bit of poker tracker analysis on the session and kind of just look at some hands and go over how we played. Again, this isn't gonna be very many hands. I don't think it's even that. I don't think it's that many. I think I played a small session before this, so. So anyway, yes, we'll review a few hands and just kind of go over any possible differences, any different ways we could have played, and go from there. So definitely forward in that. But as you can see, like the games, and taking into account this is an evening. This is we're about 7:30 PST, which is about 10:30 EST right now. So at night games are pretty good. There's quite a few fish, you know, Funboy, Darren DT, FSC Fanboy left, YoAK, excuse me, Diddy Pump, Vitek, the P-Dub. I mean, there's a lot of bad players. Like the games aren't that tough as much at night, but during the day they can be unbelievably tight, during the day. So I think it's important. And here's something that kind of annoys me. A lot of upper level players downplay game selecting at smaller stakes, and I just think that that's totally wrong because I think whether you play NL2 or NL 5000, you should play the best games you can play in. And I think anyone telling you otherwise because you're NL 25, all games are good. Comparatively, yes. Comparatively, any NL 25 games can be much better than any NL 600 game. But it doesn't mean that because all the games are better, you should just play in whatever game pops up. You should play in the most profitable games. For this session, how at least how I choose games when I'm playing on Poker Stars. And obviously, when I play like Full Tilt or Ultimate Bet, or something you can't do, something like this. But I think the best way to choose games is to right-click this bar and sort it by players or waitlist or whatever, and then sort it by players to the flop. Some people do average pot, and I think that has merit, but I just don't think it's as good because usually when the people with all players to the flop indicates a lot of people trying to limp in the hands, which is much more likely to indicate bad players. Anyway, what I would do, and this is what I did during the challenge, I would just hop on like all the best games waitlists. Because you have some games where people are like these games are absolutely like so juicy. Like this game right here, more than half the people are going to the flop. Like just in a random sampling, like almost everyone is just playing their hands. So like you can actually find some really good games if you just game select. And again, L25 is not quite as important, but there's no point in not getting the best games you could possibly get into. Also, another thing just quickly about microstigs, don't get discouraged. A lot of people they get discouraged when they have a downswing or they really want to like be an NL. Let's say you're an NL10 player, they really want to be NL25. Like there's no rush. I mean, online poker really isn't going anywhere at least anytime soon. So just grind it out. If you're not comfortable, stay where you're at. And if you don't have the role, don't worry about it. I mean, you just really you just need to be building your role, improving as a player, and taking your time. So here we open eights. We get flat by SG for RBO behind, and we're definitely going to be c-betting a lot of flops against him. His fold to flop isn't extremely high, but this is a kind of board where I just don't know if he's going to be floating us with just about any hand. I think he has fours or fives if he continues. And I hate to be able to narrow someone's range down like that, but when you play against these type of players in full ring, their range is extremely tight. There's no doubt about that. They continue with monsters, and they really don't. They're not going to float you too much. They're really not going to float you too much. So it's important to understand that when you're playing those games. Here we have sixes. I'm going to open that. So yeah, so we're gonna pull up Poker Striker here in a moment. Excuse me. We're we're gonna pull that up in a second and do a little analyzation. In fact, if this hand just folds, we're just gonna see our last hand and leave the table. See if anything worthy of playing. Yeah, okay. So let's pull PT real quick. And let's go to NL25. Actually, it won't matter because it'll only be from the session. Okay, so and this includes a few hands I played before, I think. But over the session, played 300 hands. We played pretty loose. We played 19, 16, which usually is more tag kind of six max stats, but I think that's okay. I think we played a lot of our hands in position. Of course, let's check out position stats and what if that not be the case, but um, okay, and it doesn't really line up. But the thing is, when you have a sample like 300 hands, it just means nothing. Like, I mean, we for all we know, we could have been getting most of our hands when we were in mid position. Doesn't necessarily mean much of anything. Um, and we played very tight out of the big blind, which is right. You should play quite tight out of the big blind, and not quite as tight as the small blind. It's probably a little looser than I usually play, but we had some hands that worked well to limp in with. So we ran again 16 in 1916. Again, street factor, aggression by street, not really too important, but obviously you want to play pretty aggressive, and this pretty much indicates that. Our attention steal was pretty high, but that represents just playing, a few tables, focusing on who's in the blinds, focusing on making correct plays. Your attempt to steal will be higher when you play those tables and you do stuff like that. And we never played back out of either of the blinds over that entire session. But I have no problem with that. I don't think we were dealt any hands out of the blinds anyway. So let's see. Let's look at some hands. Um, real quick here. Let's see where big winners, big losers were. So lost the big hand with it. Oh yeah, this is the one against slow roll. Again, that was standard. I flopped top two, flopped straight. Really not much to learn there. Um, so let's see what we got here. Okay, this is a hand that I got involved in right before I started the video. Sort of interesting. And I remember actually while I was talking, while I was trying to set everything up, I got in 10, and it was very, very, very marginal, and I did not like necessarily how I played it. But anyway, so under the gun min raises, and Glass Darkly, who had been running about 28-7, cold calls and the gun min raise, and I make it pretty reasonably 325 with jacks. We're gonna have position in the hand, and their ranges are pretty wide. Under the gun folds, and then he repop shoves on me, and so I was getting, I think the pot was about 21, about 21 at this point, and it was about 14 more to call. And so the question is, what is his cold call re-raise range? And I was saying to myself, before I made the video, if I had queens, I'd definitely be calling. If I had tens, I'd definitely be folding. Jacks are really just about the cutoff either way. Um, And it's funny because the six max would definitely be a call, but M25 full ring, I think folding is pretty reasonable to be perfectly honest with you. And I debated folding for a while, but he was 28-7, 28-9, something like that. And so I decided that he could just be getting crazy some portion of the time. So I called, and he had queen. So pretty much it. And again, if I had queens, I'm calling for sure there, and if I had tens, I'm folding. Really, it's pretty close cutoff. Let's see here. I don't think we. Excuse me. So let's see. See, it's difficult to really find very interesting hands because a lot of these hands are just going to be betting for value. I think this started. Was this the hand at the start of the video? Yeah. Okay. It's the one we got cold called and flop top set. Um, Again, this is just pretty standard stuff. I mean, we're obviously never going to solo play there. And I'm just not sure what he peels a straight with and doesn't call a shove because it seems to me like if he's calling the flop with the flush draw or straight draw, he's going to call this shove, excuse me, with either one of those things. So I guess it indicates to me maybe he had a hand like maybe like a queen jack, and he just felt like his queen might be good in the flop, and now he's not good, or maybe a hand like hey, maybe even like eights or nines or tens. People think generally speaking, people will call you with bad hands. They just won't raise you. Um, so we don't really know what he's going to have there too often. And then again, this was the hand where made most of our profit, and it was basically a cooler. But generally speaking, in these games, people love to play suited hands. So hands, king high suited hands and ace high suited hands go very much up in value because people like suited junk in the low level games. They just do. The bad players like suited junk. So I was looking at some analysis of all of my hands I played. I've got like 350K hands lifetime L25, as sad as that is. And my profit with suited aces was much higher than my profit with suited connectors because you overflush people, and I mean they're gonna pay you off. No one folds flush. So and when you have suited connector, you get some poor spots. Um, because people aren't going to fold higher flush draws. So I think it's important to realize that. But obviously, if I had 8-9 suited and late position, I'm going to open that as well. So not really much you can do, just kind of take it with a grain of salt and realize that higher suited hands are stronger in L25. So pretty standard. I mean, we bet he min raises. Obviously, we can't slow play. So he just, I mean, I guess clicks it back. I don't know exactly what he did, and we ship it in. So yeah, not really too much else to say about the stats. We played tighter in early position. I hope we didn't open anything too stupid. Generally speaking, I end up playing a little looser in early position than I think I should when I play full ring, but I don't think I play anything too off. And we played a little bit looser. We did not play that tight that loose on the button. But again, looking at our hands, we had a whole lot of garbage, so I don't really mind. Here we fold queen ten suited. Yeah, we fold queen ten suited. Or maybe this is when I was trying to set up the video. Let me think. Let me look at the time on it. Yeah, might have been. Yeah, that's probably when I was trying to set up the video. So yeah, I guess that won't completely represent that just session. Um, so yeah, so I hope that was kind of informative for you guys. Kind of just like a good general view through low stakes or through UNL. In this case, 10 to 25% full ring. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Card Runners or 2+2 or anything really. And I'm more than happy to help you guys out. So, this is Doug Polk, and wrapping up my first video here at Card Runners. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, I'll do another one of these soon. See ya.